Hello, it's Laurie or BlockchainBrad, and today I'm honoured to speak with Phantasma. Two co-founders are here to explain and give an update into all things they've been doing. So firstly, I'd like to say thank you to Sérgio for being here. You are a co-founder and you're the tech brain of Phantasma, so thanks, mate.
Hi there, Brad.
Thanks again for being here. We also have a key co-founder and the star marketer of the Phantasma outfit. His name is Alex. Alex, thank you very much for being here.
Hi, guys.
So, guys, update time to really dig deep into what you've been doing. Let's not waste any time. You explain in your literature that you are all about being a next generation blockchain. We've heard that kind of buzz terminology and phrase before, so we need to move way beyond that. Tell us, though, Sergio, in a nutshell, in your words from the tech side of things, what is it that you feel is the most key asset that Phantasma brings to the blockchain arena? And then we'll ask Alex what he thinks.
Sure. So Phantasma, one of the ideas to start a project is there are lots of different blockchain projects that are doing different things, but if you want to combine them, you run into lots of problems, like every project uses a different token, things like that. So we decided, why not take out everything that was built by other people, take the ideas, concepts, improve it a bit, and make it everything in a single system. Mm-hmm. So to make it easier for developers and for users too. This was to start it. Then later we start going a bit in detail the kind of things that we need for the project, like NFT tokens, interoperability between different blockchains.
Right. Now,
I think and that kind of stuff. Let's let Alex to say something about that.
Now, I just want to rehash some of those things, though. Really, what you're saying is you had a very pragmatic vision, a very pragmatic plan to basically build out what many of the layer one solutions want to try and do. So again, we're going to dig deep into finding out what sets you apart, if indeed it is about that, or is it just about building something that is usable? So Alex, tell us from your perspective, what's Phantasma trying to do and what have they been doing?
Yeah, so like Sergio said, and he picked a very important word, which is interoperability. Mm-hmm. With Phantasma, our number one goal is to basically bring all of crypto together in one place. Okay, so you can think of Phantasma as kind of like a proxy blockchain where you're able to access the best that crypto has to offer in just one place. So whether it is with different tokens, with different coins, with non-fungible tokens, which are digital goods from different blockchains, or even just accessing decentralized applications from different blockchains in one place. That's our goal with Phantasma.
Okay.
You understand? Yeah.
Okay, so if interoperability is a big feature, we're going to dig deep to find out how you're actually achieving that, because again, we hear that terminology and that word used quite frequently throughout different blockchain startups, and often the case is that there is this cross-chain capacity. There is cross-protocol capacities in many of them. So we're going to see if you actually can improve what you're saying. Now let's talk about, Sergio, some of the things that really are the bedrock of your tech. Now, fast, secure, decentralized, again, they're all part of the trilemma. Is there anything you could say to evidence that you're achieving these things? How are you really hitting the mark in being fast, secure, and decentralized?
The way that we are trying to achieve those three things is we did lots of research on the initial year of Phantasma before we starting going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So we had to throw lots of code around to the trash and rewrite lots of stuff. So, but in the end, we decided to go with a proof of stake model, mm-hmm. taking the good parts from what you've seen that works in different projects. Like we are taking inspiration from Neo, Ethereum, EOS, those kind of top projects that are doing similar things. And by using later on, we have to do a big change. We decided that the original concept in the white paper was not working anymore. Mm-hmm. And one of those things was introducing a dual token system along with the staking mechanism that's to make the whole proof of stake working.
Got it.
And
okay.
in the end, yeah.
So let's start with that one though, and then we'll continue on, and we'll talk about. I won't forget you. I promise.
Sure.
let's talk, Alex, about the proof of stake in the context of the risks of security, because it needs to be discussed. You are a utility model, and we'll talk about your dual token design later. But security-wise, how do we move into the discussion of POS and staking and not, risk this discussion? How can you be this viable staking model so that it really helps for your ecosystem to build?
So basically, we have, it's not exactly your plain old vanilla proof of stake model. It's a delegated proof of stake model.
Right.
You have probably already seen in other projects that some projects have what they call block producers, okay?
Right.
So instead of having a whole network of people where anyone can connect to the network and mine the token, whether it is via work, which is the case of Bitcoin, or via proof of stake models where they just stake the coins and then mine, get the new tokens. We have a delegated proof of stake with an X amount of block producers. In our case, initially it's going to be 10 active block producers plus 10 block producers, so a total of 25.
15, yeah, sorry, I didn't quite hear you. So it was 15 that are on standby for a total of 25. Okay.
Yeah, so basically we have a total of 25, 10 of which are actively producing the blocks. And these are always rotating, so each block will be verified by a different block producer, okay? Mm-hmm. And the other block producers at the same time are validating the creation of the block of that specific block producer. So it's always rotating.
Okay.
But one important thing that we have to talk about regarding security is that in systems like this, what can always happen is you have forms of cartelization or block producers that are so powerful that they cannot move from that position. So in our system, we've taken that into account and we've looked at what works and what doesn't work with other blocks to have a delegated proof of stake like this. Mm-hmm. So basically what we have is the block producers are rotating on a quarterly basis. Okay. So there's a voting that occurs every 3 months. Okay. Mm-hmm. And each block producer has to participate in the network and gain brand name in the ecosystem of Phantasma to be able to gather the votes from the community. And these votes will be from the community, everyone that has SOL. So anyone that has SOL and stakes the SOL will be able to actively participate in the decisions of the network and how does the network is run by the block producers and things like that. So that if, for example, there's one block producer that's very powerful and no one doesn't contribute to the network or has a lot of powering the network, and there's a risk in the network, a security risk. So basically, anyone in the community can join together with other people and vote that block producer out in that quarterly.
Right, it makes a lot of sense. Now, I just want to rehash these things for a moment. Now, Sergio, can you just correct me if I'm wrong? But we're having these 15 on standby and initially 10. Let's focus there for a moment. Now, those 10 will have power. We can't remove that argument from the conversation because that's the reality. But it's democratic because all the participants can vote those 10 in initially. Now, right now, we see validators and nodes to the number of 21, for example, with EOS, and we see that with other models as well. And there's always concerns about centralization. So, Sergio, with your knowledge and the fact you're one of the key designers and architects of this, are you planning on building this number out so that it is more distributed, it is more decentralized in time? Because I would imagine it needs to increase over time.
Sure. Our system, besides this block producer system, also already has a sidechain built in. Mm-hmm. No worry that you can scale the system by adding more sidechains. We have one very strict rule in our blockchain that it is every application on Phantasma is a separate sidechain. Mm. So
sure, but I'm not talking about sidechain scalability in the development of whether you do private chains, whether you do separate nodes. I'm talking about those block producers specifically that really are the driving.
Because our plan is as the number of sidechains increases, the number of block producers is going to increase linearly compared to the.
Okay.
In the future, the number of block producers is going to increase.
Right. Okay. So
yeah,
it's the initial blended number based on our tests.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, if you launch a blockchain, let's say that has 10,000 transactions per day, right? There's actually no need to have 100 block producers, because that will slow the entire network down. Okay, so initially when you launch the network, and as the network grows, you can increase the number of block producers by the capacity required by the network. So that's our system. We have the 10 active and the 15 standby, but basically every time the network requires or hits a certain average number of transactions daily on an average basis, what's going to happen is those 25 are going to increase and new block producers will be added.
Right. I mean, the reason I ask is because if you don't, you're at risk of being regarded as reasonably centralized by sheer design. Because as you've seen before with other blockchains, another one is Neo as a great example. It's it has quite few. It has few nodes, and so yes, it has some advantages for sure with finality and with being able to scale potentially, but in the sense that with regard to distribution and fairness of the ethos of decentralization, it just isn't cutting it. So it's good to know that your side chains will allow you to develop over time. Now, I wanted to ask you, Sergio, why Phantasma? What was the primary reason that you built this, when you could easily just, observe other blockchains doing certain things that we've talked about, doing the decentralization, the scaling, and the security, doing them quite well? What sets Phantasma apart that makes it valuable to add into the already very saturated marketplace of layer one solutions?
Sure. So before Phantasma, I did lots of works in the Neo blockchain. And before Neo, I also did lots of experiments in Ethereum. And every blockchain that has their own ways to do things. For example, let's start with Ethereum. Ethereum is one of considered more decentralized, but not only decentralized blockchain itself, the development of everything. Thing is, you have lots of projects separated. Everything is doing their own way. With Neo, they share things a bit. You have those guys on top that are doing the core development, and then you have the City of Sign and other groups doing their own things. But in the end, I saw that it was also not working. So we decided we have an experience, and they have a small team, and we have lots of ideas that those ideas could not be implemented on top of existing blockchains because we do not have the power role to change them at the core. So it required doing a separate project.
Got it. I like that you came with experience from the City of Zion as well, because what I'm hearing from you in translation is that you clearly just didn't feel that a lot of these layer one solutions were cutting it, were really hitting the mark, and you wanted to create your own from scratch, or at least try, because you do have that technological prowess and ability. So thanks for letting us know. Now, with regard to some of the claims that you're making, Alex, you might be able to help us out here. One of the statements is that you are a one-stop solution or one-stop shop for, bringing these features together in one. Do you think that's a good analogy? And what does it even mean to be that one-stop hub?
Yeah, so basically, like we see many projects, what they're doing is they're trying to build their own ecosystem and grow their own blockchain and their own ecosystem as big as possible by bringing more dApp developers, trying to acquire users for their own dApps in their own ecosystem. But our approach to the development of Phantasma and to the growth of Phantasma is actually quite different, because it's more like a word-of-mouth model where we're focused on providing to the user, to any user that comes and uses our application, our Phantasma app, we want to provide a place where they can access decentralized applications from different projects. So we're not playing favorites here. We're not saying our blockchain is the best, okay? We're just saying that in our vision, the way that crypto and blockchain will evolve and will move further ahead is that we have a place where people can discover and use the best that each blockchain has to offer. Because let's be honest here, some blockchains are very good for some things, but they don't work for other things, okay? Right. So you have blockchains that are very good on gaming, You have blockchains where finance decentralized applications are better. So if you have a place where you can fetch the best of each category and showcase it to the public and provide it in an easy way for the public to use, because one thing is us that we know what we are doing with by using coins and things like that. But if you bring outside people and you start talking about addresses and you need to send to this address and you need to convert it to send your token to an exchange to convert it into another token, then there won't be mass adoption, because normal people don't want to go through that
right.
You
Sure.
can easily see Facebook and the current social media. People, if it's easy to use, that's what people care about.
Right. Now, Sergio, I want to develop or extend on what Alex is saying. Now, often we see when interoperability is a big feature of a blockchain, they often develop a BPaaS or a SaaS or some sort of IaaS, meaning some sort of software-driven or middleware. Now, if you want to support other blockchains, like we've seen with the likes of Quant Network, for example, or just thinking out loud, because they have Overledger, or if we look at Morpheus Labs, for example, who has a SaaS model to support other blockchains, are you also going to look at some sort of service or products that do this? Because underlying that would be your blockchain. And I think that's a key point, that you do have it. But how are you going to fundamentally integrate and cooperate and interoperate with these other blockchains? And what are these blockchains you're going to work with?
Sure. So in the beginning, we are targeting at least 3 or 4 more popular blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then the EOS and NEO, because those also have support for smart contracts, and it's very important for interoperability, at least in the beginning. And this thing that you talk about, SaaS and the others, we in Phantasma, we are everything that we are developing, we are using them ourselves. So, for example, we find that the SaaS is really necessary. For example, we did the game National Man. That was one game we used to test our technology. And it was running on an initial version of Phantasma blockchain, but it was connected to NEO. So in this game, people could use NEO or Sol 2, which is actually a NEO token until now, for play the game. So there was already a layer of interoperability right there, but it was still very primitive.
Right.
We learned a lot from that experience, both in this area and also non-fungible tokens too. That is another thing that we already did lots of work.
Okay, and in terms of languages, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, it was languages. You have Solidity, you have Python, you have, is it C?
C# and C++ too.
Yeah.
Me and Alex, one of our roles is I try to speak with lots of developers to try and understand what they want and what they need in the blockchain. And for Alex do the same, but for the users. So we want to have mainstream adoption from both sides. And by speaking with lots of developers, I try to understand what language they want to use. So I broke already support for lots of language. Our team has a good range of language that we can, and we already launched an SDK initial version with support, I think, for 5 languages.
Okay. Now, are you finding also, Alex, you might be able to answer this, are you finding that the other blockchains beyond the ones that Sergio is explaining are likely to support you so that you can expand the support network, the blockchain layer, so that, you know, essentially you can represent them in such a way where you are that interoperable blockchain?
Yeah. So basically from the support standpoint, everything, most of the things are made on our end. Okay, so we can add the support, and we will add the support as we go to the different blockchains. Okay, so it doesn't actually require that we work directly with the blockchains per se. Okay, but we one of our goals is to try and form that connection, try and form that relationship in order to make those processes much faster.
Sure.
But, like it is the example, for example, that we have with the non-fungible tokens, that we will also allow NFTs from different blockchains. We can always, let's just give an example of CryptoKitties or Ethereum. we can always create a smart contract on Ethereum and one on Phantasma and connect them both. And we can do this for any blockchain.
Okay. So aren't you part of the whole movement to create the new internet of data, the new internet of value? Because if you're doing this and other parties are doing it as well, gradually, if we use the analogy of neurons to the brain, eventually the whole brain's going to light up. The whole ecosystem of blockchain should light up globally because all of you are starting to interconnect. Is that the idea? To foster ecosystem?
It is. One of the things that we've seen from the start is that, for example, Ethereum is a very powerful blockchain and it has a lot of capabilities. And you see lots of people developing amazing and innovative things on Ethereum. The problem that we see there is that they're all scattered. You can see like thousands of projects, but they're all each in their place and they don't connect with each other.
They're in their silos. Yeah, in
their silos. So how do you expect to grow the blockchain adoption and grow the user base and acquire more users if everyone's trying to grab one user or two users, different users, at the same time, where you could always create a system and you can create a network of these connected internet per se, where you are growing together.
Sure. Now, what's interesting is, if I understand it right, not only are you trying to be your own blockchain, so we'll use the analogy again of the neurons in the brain, you are a key neuron, but you're also trying to be that electricity that lights the whole system up because you want to bring that interconnection into reality. Yeah. But to do that, Sergio and Alex, you really, truly need token utility that works. You need a token velocity system that is viable, and you need a really good token economic model. So you've developed a token system that's a dual token. Yeah. Let's really understand this. Can it even work? Because we've seen Neo's design, lots of controversy with regard to governance and utility tokens because they can imply security in some respects. So what are you guys doing that's different?
Okay, so basically we have to take a look at two examples here. We can look at the example of Neo, where effectively the network transactions and the network costs are free. Okay, but the problem that you have, this is very good for the user, but the problem that you have with a system like this is that the system can have a lot of security breaches, in the sense, for example, anyone can just spam the network.
Yeah, and the network civil attacks.
Very slow. Yeah, just like the equivalent of a DDoS attack on a blockchain. Yeah. So with a system like this, we understood that you cannot create a system like this because you're always at the mercy of any player in the market, and there's always malicious players who will be trying to hinder the network.
Right.
With the other, now talking on the other end, what you have is systems where, like Ethereum, where you are paying gas fees, or you're paying a small portion of a cryptocurrency to pay for those transactions. But in that case, what happens is it functions all well, okay, for us and for sending money back and forth and all of that. But and for B2B businesses, most of them wouldn't care about it. But if you're talking from a consumer perspective, from a business to consumer perspective, we understand that no user will want to pay 1 cent or a fraction of a cent for each transaction that it does on the blockchain. Okay, so you have these two problems. You have one, the network's free, but it has security issues. One, the network's paid, but then it's very improbable that there will occur mass adoption because of the consumer aspect. So we actually came up with a system where the network has a cost, but the cost is essentially free. Okay, so you cannot attack the network because basically with our system we have Sol and energy. So the Sol token and kcal calories. We're always creating these sorts of crazy names because energy, calories, what you put into your body.
So both of these though are utility tokens. Is that correct?
Yeah. So in one sense, okay. So Sol basically functions as your stake. You basically have a piece of real estate in the network. Okay. So you're entitled to a piece of the network's resources. So in this case, what you have is you stake your Sol tokens, and you will get energy on a daily basis, kind of like a mobile data plan or a Wi-Fi data plan or the data plan that you have in your phones, and you'll be able to use the network essentially for free because you are receiving the second token and you're not spending SOL. And the network requires that secondary token, that network resource in order to run. So you need to.
So let me just clarify for a second. So to use the terms that we know, gas, it sounds like is a little bit like your energy token. In that is the real ecosystem driver for interactions, transactions, and applications and real world use that's active.
Yeah, but then, it's mandatory in our case. So it's not like where it's an optional thing.
Sure. So mandatory, you must use that, and it's not. There's not negotiable access to it in terms of you must if you want to interact with the overarching ecosystem of your whole network. But when it comes to SOL, that particular utility token, what you guys sounds like what you want is you want more people to stake that, so that it really consolidates the value, the overall value of that particular utility token by design, by scarcity modeling, in that the more that's removed from circulating supply, the more that implies value for that particular token in conjunction with growth of your ecosystem. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but also from a utility standpoint, for example, when we're talking about paid things, because we're also going to have paid things in our ecosystem, for example, our marketplace, our email, our Phantasma chat, and our cloud storage that will come out in the future, it will have features and things that you will only be able to pay with the SOL token. Okay, but
that's really important. That's what I wanted to hear, because I didn't want to hear that it was just simply a vault that everyone can SOV the SOL token, because to me that would sound like a vault in a bank. It would sound like a Bitcoin narrative, because that's what they would, they hold true to that maximalist SOV. So you want to espouse an SOV use case, but it's not the only one, and you actually want to use that SOL token for real applications in the real world and even in enterprise.
Exactly, but as you can see, for example, in this case, let's say, for example, I'm using a chat. Would anyone be willing to pay for sending one message or sending messages individually? No, of course not. That's something that occurred like 15 years ago. No one does that anymore. Everyone uses WhatsApp and messaging systems which are free. So the system that we created is that we're gonna, if you are using the applications on a basic level, you'll be able to do everything with just energy. But if you want to, for example, in the case of the chat or in the case of the email, if you want to have more features within kind of like a basic and a premium version, anything that we create in that sense will have that sort of utility aspect where you need to use the SOL tokens as payment in order to use those features.
Right, but obviously that having that incentivization structure so that it does really encourage people to hodl that token, that's what's really going to arguably drive the value of this as your ecosystem grows, because the more that do that, the greater the propensity for that particular token to increase in value, which you can't comment on, but because obviously it's about utility modeling, but that seems to be the utility design. Now with energy, because of stablecoins, they're designed to essentially be exactly what they say, to stabilize the network, to enable the same sort of thing that any fiat currency would do. Do you expect that energy also will be relatively stable because it's meant to be that, currency of value, that intercurrency, essentially, to make it all work? Or will it be like Neo's gas that still has that flux?
Well, we expect that it will have some sort of flux, but it will keep a stable price. Why? Because if you are releasing the token on a regular basis, and anyone can get the token on a regular basis, it is the same as you would have, for example, with an application where you would give out the token in exchange for something else. If, let's say, for example, you have an app where you give out 200 gems or 200 tokens, and someone needs to pay 1 Ethereum, right? So outside of the system in the exchanges, the price is always going to fluctuate a bit, but then anyone can go into that game or that application and be able to buy it with 1 Ethereum. So that means that from an economic perspective, the price will remain at that level on average on the long term. But one thing that's also very important that we look at with our system that it's something that hasn't been fully solved, which is token velocity, what you talked about as well.
Absolutely.
Within our system. We looked at the system and we looked at from the economic perspective of money and the circulation, and we understand that most of the systems that are being created nowadays and most of the blockchains, they're going to encounter this problem in the future in one way or another.
Yes.
So from a token velocity perspective, basically the gist of it is that if the network's so fast that the buyers, the consumers are able to buy the tokens, send it to the sellers, and the sellers convert it right away, then the new consumers that will arrive, they will always be buying effectively the same tokens, and those tokens will not change, which hinders the demand of the total token supply in general. And this is one problem that from an economic perspective hasn't been solved completely for the blockchain, but we have come up with a system that allows us to over time adapt to the token velocity of Sol. For example, we have a system where each decentralized application or each developer can adjust and impact the token velocity however they want. For example, we know that most applications, when you're talking about, let's say, for example, a consumer buying something, the seller will not need to actually convert that SOL or that currency to Bitcoin or to Ethereum or to dollars right away. So from an economic perspective, if you have a system where each developer can, let's say, for example, you can build an application where the sellers will get the currency one time, like every time, every day on the same time. Okay, that means that throughout the day, the consumers that are buying SOL in order to spend it in the network, they will always be buying different SOL. It's not the same SOL, and it's not rotating. So this means that as the network can evolve, and as we analyze things, and as the whole space evolves and understands how token velocity affects the marketplace and the demand and supply of the tokens, we are also able to talk and to work out with our developers and with the people in our developer group, the Phantom Force, a solution that allows them to effectively slow down or speed up the token velocity of SOL.
Okay. Now, how do you remove the equation of the payment coin, the settlement coin? Because obviously that's part and parcel with the SOL token. You even mentioned it before, and also with energy. Now, when you do these kinds of things, typically that creates a narrative for stabilization in time, because obviously for enterprise, for example, they don't want to see significant flux in a token, especially if they want to do business, unless they're doing things in fiat and then you're doing the back end conversions, which wouldn't be a problem for them in that instance. So what's the plan there? If indeed, part of this design is payment and settlement, how does that all fit in with attracting businesses today?
Yeah, so like we said, from a blockchain interoperability sense, we're going to be allowing different currencies. So businesses and applications for consumers will be able to choose what type of payments do they require in the network. So if, for example, a business is very sensitive and requires a payment that will not fluctuate in price, such as it is the case, for example, for e-commerce, they can always have a stable coin.
Like Alchemint.
Like Alchemint or like a MakerDAO or different stable coins that you can implement in the system. We're also going to implement our own stable coin, but it's more catered towards not so much the investment in the whole exchange side of it, where people just convert the coins to our stable coin in order to hoard value, and to short or short, for example, Bitcoin or other currencies. But it's more for the seller and the actual user base where we're always going to have in our in storage the equivalent to our own stablecoin in mix like a portfolio of different
so will you facilitate enterprises as you onboard? I would imagine that's the target long term, is to get real businesses using blockchain, and your blockchain specifically, and perhaps others as you try and interconnect them. Now, as you do that, are you going to help them to utilize exchanges or make the transition? And is fiat going to be involved at all? Because obviously their language is in fiat right now. So how do you ease these companies in and bring blockchain and take blockchain to them?
Yeah, so basically, from our perspective and from our approach to the network, since we're more of a content-focused blockchain, we're looking at mostly at e-commerce from that enterprise perspective. And from that way, basically what we're going to have is we're going to have our own systems and our own fiat gateways that we are partnered with that allows for those businesses to be able to quickly convert that money to fiat.
I thought so. I thought so because Fabio is also a colleague of Sergio's. They're also looking at that with Nash, and you're connected there. And you're also planning to do your own DEX. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sergio can talk a bit more about this, but basically we want to make it as easy for the consumer to be able to convert one token into the other within the Phantasma app. So instead of having accounts for exchanges and sending tokens back and forth, it's going to be one click or one pop-up push of a button of yes or no.
Okay.
But Sergio.
Sure. Sergio, do you want to add more to both those comments about Nash's collaboration potentially, and also your plan with the DEX as well?
Sure. We are partnering with Nash because we think they are one of the best projects currently in the blockchain space, and they have very interesting features like the fiat gateways that will be useful for Phantasma. Besides that, about our own DEX is something that we are trying to come up that should be integrated in the chain itself, along with the other features, because later on people will want to have a DEX on top of Phantasma. But if they are going to introduce it, they are going to probably create their own token, things like that. It's going to be a separate project. So we want to avoid that fragmentation and have a DEX support built in. But it is not a DEX like in the sense just a single DEX. It's more like a liquidity framework for people to build their own DEXs on, and every DEX will be interconnected. That's the plan for us.
Right. Okay. So that'll be later down in the roadmap. Let's talk about roadmap though a little bit more. Some exciting things are happening for you. I checked your Twitter today. The date of April 30th is an important one for you with regard to Mainnet. So let's discuss that and what it means for Phantasma right now.
Yeah. So basically, well, our goal in our roadmap is to launch the mainnet by the end of this month. We're right now doing the testing, and we'll do a closed community beta test with our app and with our natural man game that will allow us to do the final testing for the blockchain and to be able to see whether there's any problems, there's any major issues, and to be able to launch the mainnet by the end of the month. So if everything goes well and all the testing goes well, we're on track to release the mainnet by the end of this
That's great. Now, I like hearing also you're being realistic and saying you're not going to rush it if something does come up. Now, Sergio, let's discuss these phases of testing, the stress testing, the developers that you've interacted with, the internal team. Have you done the kind of necessary rigor to make sure that all of the processes of the test nets are being done correctly so that you can arguably launch in time?
Sure. Our testnet was first released to the public in around November last year. And from then we've been in contact with developers that are already building their own things on Phantasma. Right now it's more like doing experiments on Phantasma because until the mainnet is out, it's mostly just that. And we also did several tests using the testnet, using nodes spread around the world, like one in Europe, America, Japan, that kind of thing. Right now, the Mainnet is also designed to be launched with the minimal capacities and features that we need for it to start, like the staking, transfer of tokens, basic smart contract capacity, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Then in the roadmap we are going to launch things by one as they are finished.
Okay. That's the plan. Right, and that's good to hear.
Now, important that we are not we are following the roadmap and following every procedure that we need to launch a mainnet, because it's something very big and very important. Like we've been talking about security issues and things like that. So if anything happens, we will be happy, and we will have to delay the launch of the mainnet. That's sure. Not an issue.
Sure. Now, the integrity of the whole system is imperative. It's paramount to all of you to ensure that Phantasma is here in a decade. So you've got to also respect the tech, and I'm hearing that discussion now clearly from both of you. Now, native token plan for conversion, for ease of transfer from those who have the current token, is it going to be easy for them? Talk us through the transition.
Yeah, so basically the transition is something that we also want to show to the public of our vision with the Phantasma app. Okay, so we want to make the transition as easy as possible. People will be able to send the tokens into a Neo address, and within the app itself, within the Phantasma app itself, they are going to be able to click one button and convert it to mainnet tokens. Okay. And from an ease of use perspective and from a growth perspective, one of the strategies that we have is that throughout 2019, anyone will be able to switch between Phantasma mainnet tokens and Neo tokens. Okay, so if you want to send it to the Phantasma app to be able to stake and earn all of the rewards and participate in the ecosystem of everything we have talked about so far, you're gonna have to leave the tokens in the mainnet. In the mainnet stage. But if you want, for example, if you want to send it back to exchanges and you want to sell it, you're going to easily and quickly be able to do that and convert it to Neo tokens and send it back.
Okay, so you have that versatility built in.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly. That's good to know, because those who support this utility token need to know they have that ease of access, and they also have time. They don't have to just go and rush in and make these conversions suddenly with a short period of short window of opportunity. So I appreciate that. Now, Sergio, I want to talk to you about NFTs, non-fungible standards. Mm-hmm. Are you going to create your own standard, or have you done that already for your own blockchain, or are you going to interoperate with other NFTs and standards from other blockchains, such as, for example, Ontology, or because they have their own, or I think also Ethereum may be looking at it, but certainly there are engines.
There is already Ethereum standard too. In Phantasma, we have our own standard, but it's not finalized yet. It will be probably finalized around the mainnet launch. Mm-hmm. Like we talked before now about our national main game, is we use that game to test also things. One of the things was NFT support. So in that game, every player could have a team of luchadores. Mm-hmm. That every luchador was an NFT token that they could use to play against each other. So it was a multiplayer game where they battle. They have a market where they can train the luchadors and put them on the market for sale for other players. That's the idea of the game. And based on that, we did lots of advancements in Phantasma Chain, including regarding tokens. We already have a very strong foundation for that.
Okay, got it. Now, what about your SDK? You mentioned that before. Can we talk about how you're developing that to make sure that developers have a better suite of options, a better suite of tools, because that needs to continue to build for your developers to be incentivized to continue supporting Phantasma?
Sure. In our SDK, we did have to use a very special technique to develop the SDK. Since we want to support lots of language, but we are still developing lots of things in the blockchain, so lots of rewriting stuff, things changing. One trick we did with our team is we have an internal project that can build the SDK from just one click.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes, instead of everyone writing a different language support for Phantasma, we have a set of templates that they just connect to the original source and rebuild everything. It's a bit complex, but it allows us to maintain SDK updated to every language at every point in time. That's
right. Well, your developers must love that because it makes the template makes it easier for them. How is the sentiment for those right now utilizing GitHub? Obviously, it's all open source now. Is the repository growing?
Of course, our repository, you have the my one for Phantasma that's already quite huge,
Mm-hmm.
and you have lots of separate projects. Also, like for the SDK, for the compilers, that kind of stuff. We have a very large code base already.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
Another interesting thing for SDK is that we already are not only targeting programming language, but also Unity, the game engine. So our SDK already have support for that.
Mm.
So because National Mine was built around that.
Right.
Basically.
Yes, and that was actually confirmed, much of what you're saying.
Unity game, and we think that for developers that want to go into blockchain and have experience on games, it's a very easy way to go. They just go to the Unity, they create a game that uses blockchain using Phantasma. It's very easy to do.
Okay. Well, thanks for that information. I actually reached out to Bill, who's one of the admins in your Telegram. He is a respected coder in just blockchain and crypto generally. And he also did confirm, that the GitHub is very active and he's very excited about some of the innovations that are happening in the more dev-centric, area where code is king and the code is quality. So it is good to hear and confirm from a coder as well, because that's not my experience. I had to make sure that there is other viewpoints other than yourself. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit more about delays, because initially my understanding was there was a delay in your mainnet. Can we talk about why that happened? Because that did come up in the community.
Sure. It's like I like to say that mainnet, for now, while the testnet is just a testnet, the mainnet is important because there's money involved. So we can't rush a testnet. You can trust a mainnet because if there's a big problem there people will lose money. So
right.
we are developing the mainnet. We have our own testing team that is always reviewing the code, finding flaws. But we also have a separate team doing an audit of the blockchain to make sure that everything is perfect.
Okay.
And from an improvement perspective, we understand, and I hope you can understand as well, that the blockchain, like all the features, are not come up with from day one. So one of the things is that we've been improving our test and our blockchain over time. For example, since January, we've basically rewritten the whole blockchain, and that's why our initial date was Q1, so by the end of March, but we had to delay it because the whole new system and this whole tokenomic system that solves most of the issues that you have with blockchains and with the current blockchain systems and frameworks has been improving over time. Just an example, which is, for example, our voting system that we have for block producers, for voting for the Phantom Force Developer Fund and things like that. That system has been improving every day. Okay, so right now, for example, we will in the upcoming weeks we'll also launch the new system and the new ways that we have built, so that the system is more bulletproof. For example, just a sneak peek. This isn't out to anyone.
Give it to us, Alex. What is it?
A new increase. So with the voting system that you have on current blockchains, there's always the problem with cartelization. Okay, so if one person has most of the tokens, let's say, for example, 30% or 40% of the tokens in a blockchain, they effectively have all of the voting power. They can basically rule the network,
Yeah, so it's a monopoly.
So it's a monopoly. With our case, one thing that we had already implemented is that the voting power is related to the SOL that you have staked, but more importantly, the voting power is the square root of the SOL that you have staked. Okay, so this is something that was already announced to the public before. This allows that effectively, let's say, for example, one person has 50% of the tokens or 51% of the tokens. If they vote yes on a proposal or on a block producer, it's going to take, let's say, 5% of people, individual people with less amounts of SOL, to be able to vote against that person, and their vote would win. Okay, so it's not ruled by one person, not one monopoly, but there's also laws that could be could appear in that system. And one of the things that we have recently added is that the voting power will be compounded by the amount of days that you have the SOL staked. So, for example, if you stake for 100 days, you will have 100% of your voting power. If you stake for 300 days, you'll have 100%.
Sure, it reminds me of the Binance model, where they're incentivizing through their staking system too, as they lead up to their launch pads. It's a little like that, in that they're incentivizing according to the days in which you hold. So you're saying 100 days you get rewarded, and you get rewarded for more if you hold for 200, and so forth. So that's really clear, and I understand that model. But I want to go back a bit to the delay discussion of the mainnet, because you particularly, Alex, you have a master's in marketing. You would know that in crypto, as soon as you say the word delay, then many people run. Now, where's the marketing strategy here? Because I hear the narrative from both of you that the reason for the delay is about technology, to make sure that you get all of those core aspects properly designed as a bedrock infrastructure. But in the crypto casino that we see, which is another part of crypto, many in the speculative sort of mindset, they don't care. They don't care about top tech. They don't care about the integrity of your system. They care about 10x. So how do you cope with the kind of speculative part of crypto, so that you're letting them know, because obviously don't support it, but it is a reality. It does exist. And so there are many who are just looking for your token as a point of value for the short term.
Exactly. And it's something that the team takes very seriously, is that when you're creating a full blockchain system, and you are creating a whole framework and a whole network that will run independently from us in a decentralized manner, you can't screw it up. So if there's effectively issues within the network, we need to delay the launch of the mainnet. But we also need to follow roadmaps, and we need to follow dates, because that's what actually marketing is around, is that you announce things in advance, and you announce the date where you will release your products. But in software development, not only blockchain, there's always issues. So it's something that we have had to cope with, and make that sort of balancing of the scale between the regular crypto casino that you talked about and the actual user protection.
Yeah,
in the case of Phantasma, we are looking at creating a blockchain that's catered for mass adoption in the long run. Okay, everything that we are doing is either to make it easier for people to use blockchain or use cryptocurrencies, or for developers and different businesses to be able to utilize this technology and move the whole blockchain space further. Because as we know, the more users that we have on blockchain, the bigger the value of all the projects in all.
Now, Alex, how do you move into the traditional marketing sector, into that vast area that is untapped often, because we're talking about a small number of the world's population that currently engage in crypto, that currently understand blockchain. You're, again, that marketing specialist. So how are you going to bridge that information gap, that knowledge gap that simply is just still so challenging to break through?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things we have been focusing on since day one. And actually, if you look carefully at our whole system and the way that it's being built and being advertised to the current crypto community, the system itself is built in a way that it incentivizes word of mouth. So for example, let's say, for example, with the dual token system, I have Sol, I stake it to get energy. And that energy allows me to do transactions in the network.
Right.
Within the Phantasma app, I'm going to be able to create one Phantasma account for my sister, and I'm going to be able, I will stake the Sol, and she will be getting the energy on her account on a daily basis. So she can effectively, for example, use a crypto application without even knowing what blockchain is, what's transaction fees, what all of those things are. So it incentivizes word of mouth growth, because right now, most people that are in crypto would be more than happy, and most people are talking about Bitcoin and talking about Ethereum to their friends, to their family. But then when it comes to that point in space where they hit the wall, which is, yeah, okay, let me try it out. How do I work with that? Oh, yeah, you need to create an account and memorize these lengthy password with random numbers and letters. And by the way, you can only use Bitcoin. If you want to use something different, you have to create an account on an exchange and trade the tokens. Right. You know, when it comes to the crypto community is very focused on the mass adoption and the growth, but then they hit the technology wall. And they say, okay, the normal people will say, no, this takes too much work.
Yes, and I think you raise a very key point. I mean, for all of us having this discussion and for all of those listening in the crypto community, that's second nature to us. We know how to do that, and we don't really even think it's laborious. But the reality is 99% of the planet do think it's laborious and they won't touch it. So what you're saying is that if our families can interact in such a way where through an affiliate program, they are having a bit of fun, they are maybe even making some money indirectly by having this program, or you are as someone sending them the opportunity to engage. That's where it gets interesting, because it's much like passing on information through an app to app or phone, and having the access through phones as well. That makes it more likely to spread across the globe, because the technology itself is commonplace. Everyone tends to have that phone. So I think it's an interesting strategy that you're doing to really foster
then you need
growth.
to compound it. You need to compound it with the second aspect, which is if we're building our own blockchain with just the Phantasma apps, that would be one thing. But we're also building an app that's going to allow users to access the best Ethereum dApps, the best Neo dApps, the best EOS dApps. So basically, you have those two things working together to make it so much easier for people outside of crypto to be able to use crypto applications.
Sure. So you working with these blockchains is also a way of capitalizing on the ecosystem itself, because they have user bases, they have users, and they have vast numbers, especially Ethereum. So if you're going to interconnect with them, you get access to those people as well. So that's quite a smart strategy. Now, with regard to swaps, we've discussed them, but can we discuss the terms cosmic swap? I think that's the terminology, and the two-way swap as well. What's the swaps going on more specifically?
Okay, so one thing is the normal token swap that we have with the Sol token, which is the Neo and the Mainnet tokens. Yep. The second thing is the cosmic swaps framework. So further down the line, and also incentivizing this mass adoption growth, we within the Phantasma app, you're going to be able to, let's say, for example, you have Bitcoin. You're going to be able to click one button and convert that into Ethereum or into Neo or into EOS or different currencies that are supported within the app. So effectively, you won't have to create an exchange account, send the tokens to the exchange, and then convert it, knowing how to understand order books and things like that. You don't have to do it. You'll be able to effectively and quickly with one button or two buttons presses, you'll be able to convert that token to another currency. And this is very important, because if our Phantasma app is going to support different decentralized applications, let's say Ethereum dApps, EOS dApps, Neo dApps, the most likely thing that will happen is that someone will go into a Neo dApp and they will not have Neo. They will have Ethereum or they will have Bitcoin. So when they go there and the dApp requires, let's say, Neo tokens or one a Neo coin or one of the NEP5 tokens, the app itself is going to throw a pop-up saying, okay, you don't have Neo. But you have Ethereum. Do you want to exchange X amount of Ethereum for X amount of Neo? And they click yes or no, and it converts. So on the back end, what's happening, it's essentially an order book, a decentralized order book with a liquidity for both Neo and Ethereum. But the user will not see that. They will only see yes or no. And this is very important, because if you are talking about people outside of crypto, your family, your friends, they will not create account on exchanges and convert tokens anywhere now to do what they want. So so you need to have a system, and this is the Cosmic Swaps framework that Sergio is talking about, that will support these automatic conversions. So this is something that will be implemented in the app throughout this year, and as we go, it's something that's added over time.
Got it. So easy is a key word in what you're thinking of for the future, and seamless as well. And that automaticity is going to be a key feature for mass adoption. That's cool. That's good to know that that's one of the things that you want to create to achieve that kind of spread, that kind of real world context, so that you can build out a real and viable model. Now, business partners, you have a vast number. I've watched on your website as it scrolled through. I noticed we mentioned a few already. We talked about Nash, Alchemint with the stablecoin connection. You've also got quite a few others like Nell, Wax, is it Black Hat? I apologize if I said it wrong. Evolution, Blue Zell, list goes on. Now, what I wanted to ask just generally is, are these real partnerships that do things reciprocally? Because I just want to be frank, there's lots of bullshit, and there's lots of superficial partnerships that don't do anything except sell narratives. So can you tell us clearly, are these partnerships the real deal, and that they're going to do stuff?
Yeah, so basically, since the start, we have looked at creating and connecting with the projects that we believe have the best potential, or the best crypto decentralized applications in each of the areas we are tackling in. So whether it's gaming, whether it's communication, social media, e-commerce, storage, gambling, all of those areas, we are looking for the best partners in each of the areas. So if you look at all of our partners, our current partners, we basically have different partners for different things for each of these areas. And this is a direct relation that we have with these partners in order to work with them on a regular basis to be able to provide in our Phantasma app what we believe is the best ecosystem for that specific area. The users will decide in the end. But for example, if you're talking about a decentralized exchange, we believe that Nash will be the one of the main.
Of course, I expected that. I expected that from you guys anyway.
If you're talking about NFTs and trading digital goods, then you can look that Wax is one of the leading forefront technologies that you have out there with OP skins. They're already working with mainstream games like Counter-Strike and other games, and providing also physical goods now as well. So if you talk about hosting, Evolution Host is one of our partners, and they already have hosting solutions that people can pay with different cryptocurrencies with a plethora of.
Sure, Alex, you're a master marketer, so you could go on forever on these kind of points. But the point you're making is these are real world, and that these things do real things to try and bridge the gap and trying to bring this into the mainstream arena. Now, the thing I do want to ask though, it's one thing to have this crypto centric sort of business support, but what about the non-crypto business? That enterprise we're talking about before, you as a key marketer, you would be talking out in this area as well. Who is in the pipeline there? Who is a non-crypto company that is paying attention to what Phantasma is doing and in the pipeline for potential partnership that isn't one of these that have a token? Yeah,
so right now we are talking to different companies. From a non-crypto perspective, we're looking at two areas. One of them is gaming. Okay, so gaming, as we know, along with different industries, are usually the ways to adopt new technologies. They're usually the first to adopt new technologies. Well,
we've seen that with Tron.
Yeah, we've seen that with Tron and videos and those things. So gaming is one of the areas that we are looking at, and we will have and we'll announce partnerships really soon in those areas. But we're also looking at enterprise solutions and companies that talk to us about integrations, whether it is verifications or validations using blockchain or hashes or things like that for different purposes. We are already in communications with those companies that want to implement a solution using blockchain. But most of the times, these are private solutions. These are not public solutions.
But I do want to talk to you about that. I'm really glad you mentioned that. So when you say private, that means money. So is there revenue streams created from this ability? Because Sergio mentioned before with the capacity of the ecosystem to be building side chains out, some of those side chains can be private. So in that respect, not only does it afford this means in which enterprises can create their own side chains, arguably, but you could create revenue. As you run out of money from your raise, you're going to need money to continue.
Yeah. So from a B2B or B2C perspective, Phantasma is focused number one on B2C. Okay. We see many solutions and many blockchains are focused firstly on enterprise solutions. And most of them will be able to create catered solutions to each enterprise. Okay. In our case, our focus will be within our projects, our products, and from a consumer perspective. So whether that is the marketplace, whether that is the email, which can also be used by an enterprise, for example, because it has added security features that you usually cannot have with a regular email, whether it is the chat or the decentralized cloud storage, these are all things that can be used in a B2B a B2B scenario, but our number one focus is B2C.
Got it. Okay, now you've made that very clear, so I won't harp on about the enterprise so much now. Maybe later. I think you'll adopt this possibly in the future as you evolve.
As we grow and as we evolve, we are open to different sorts of implementations.
Right. Now, here's a tough and challenging one. Very few co-founders like this discussion, but let's talk about exchanges, because typically you don't go to exchanges. A good quality project just does their tech and that the exchanges call you. Now, what's the plan? I've had a bit of a look, and these are the companies I found in your Twitter. I found OKX, Huobi, Switch.io, LBank, Gate.io, KuCoin, and Binance, all in your Twitter. Why did I find that? And are you talking to any of these?
Yeah, so we have talked to different exchanges, but from an adoption standpoint and from our own goals of mass adoption within the B2C scenario, we are looking at the exchanges and also the fiat gateways that will allow us to integrate directly with our systems and allow us to provide a better solution for our users. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily matter that you have the biggest exchange out there. What matters is that you have an exchange where you can work with them directly and improve your technology and provide an even better use case for the actual users of your blockchain.
Okay.
So in our case, we're looking at, for example, Nash, which we have a direct relation with the co-founders and with the company itself. They're also a fellow NEO project, and the founders were from City of Zion. We're looking at having Nash as our primary exchange going forward in the future, but we're also going to have our own internal decentralized exchange ecosystem, like Sergio has explained to you with the DEX framework.
Okay.
But we're always open to listing on different exchanges and to provide an easier way for the crypto community to be able to acquire SOL.
Right, and what I'm translating there is that it's very likely that last comment you made is going to happen, where other exchanges do engage and do list you, whether or not you like that or not, because there's clear indicators, having mentioned before some of those names, that they are paying attention to what you're doing and arguably want to list you as you develop, because your mainnet's coming too. So that always creates some attention at the very least. Now, I also want to talk to you about money, because you've raised money. I want to find out how much money you have left in your runway to continue building, and how you're going to continue in the future with regard to sustainability.
So basically, we have built the system in a way that our engagement and our connection to the project and our the centralization aspect of Phantasma will grow smaller over time. Okay, so that's why we are creating the Phantom Force. That's why we are our own ecosystem of block producers that contribute to the network, whether it is by creating dApps, by creating online content, by creating all of those things. We are building the ecosystem so that it becomes more and more decentralized as the network evolves. So from a funding perspective and from a runway perspective of our raise and the money that we have, we have seen many projects in Neo and in other chains that have been closing shop because they haven't been able to maintain their runways and be able to maintain the funds to develop their blockchains further. But in our case, we have more than enough runway to be able to finish the roadmap and to deliver every product that we have and everything that we have promised and will deliver to the public. Okay. And as we go, as the network evolves, as a group of developers that will start growing around Phantasma, we'll start building different decentralized applications. Our goal is going to in the network is going to be more like kind of like a guidance counselor or something like that. It's not directly impacting in the network. But we'll also be building different apps, different games as we go.
Okay, now let's talk trust for a moment. Now, looking at your team, obviously we've already referenced them, so we won't go through them. But when we look at Sergio, Bruno, Bernardo, Rafael, and João, all of them have strong engineering backgrounds. So if you'd like to know more, go to their website, get to know them, go and research them. But what I found interesting is that even with your advisors, in the past, I have to briefly, there's been some contention. There's been some issues raised with some of the members of your team. Now, my understanding, and I don't want to put you in a situation to comment on this, but Ian Bellina was raised. It has been something that he has been known to be part of the project as an advisor. So he's moving out of this picture, as I understand. Now, whether or not people have an opinion of that, that's just the reality. So moving forward beyond that, let's discuss the true statement of the risks of pump and dump, because some of the issues, when I had a look at the price, for example, there's been price movement where it's moved down over time. So I want to find out from you, given these past controversies, did some of the advisors actually, wheel and deal? Did they have significant numbers of tokens? Did they have unlocked tokens? What actually really did happen with Phantasma to ensure that the long-term value of your token was upheld for your team and your advisors and your investors?
Yeah, so from just a price point perspective, Phantasma is quite in line with what happened with most of the projects out there in the blockchain space, which is after all of these crashes in the market and all of that, most of the projects are close to between 10 to 20% of the initial ICO price. In our case right now, we were also at that 10% level, but right now, as we approach the mainnet and people start discovering Phantasma and this new ecosystem with the dual token system and all of those things, the project has been increasing in value. So right now we're basically at close to a third of the ICO price in dollar wise. Okay, but in both Neo, BTC, and Ethereum, we have been able to stably maintain our positions either close to the ICO price or a bit above.
Got it. Now, harping back, that's good to know. Now, with the investors that initially supported you in that pre-sale era, in those private sales and seed round. Now, let's get real about this. It's commonplace, so we want to get the facts. Have the majority of those people been able to access their tokens now, since it's been a while since you did the ICO? Yeah,
so with the private sale, we did a vesting schedule of 3 months for the bonus tokens.
Yeah. So I thought it would be short. Because Ian Bellina was part of your project, I would assume that, because he's always said he likes short lockups.
Well, it wasn't because of that. But it was one of the things that we understood after we went through the process was not so much the bonus tokens or the 3 month vesting, which was much more the the unlock on day one of the base tokens. So that's one thing that impacted us and the project a lot, and that's something that we understand after going through the process that should have been done in a different way.
Right.
As we can talk about private investors and people supporting Phantasma over the long run, as most projects have, most of the private investors have already left the project, okay? But that's when you can actually see the people that were talking the truth and talking that they would help you in the long run. Because from our private investors and from our private sale, we have a couple of big companies in big communities that have been constantly helping us out and are still very much engaged in Phantasma and holding the tokens. So we can see that those are the people that understand the long vision that we have with Phantasma and with mass adoption, and that ultimately in the long run they will have that much more higher payoff than the others did.
So the tide is turning right now, and it's even looking at that in your charts. You can't comment on price, obviously, but clearly now people are paying attention to the long-term value of this. Looking at this as a viable token structure and also blockchain infrastructure that has real value now that you're approaching the mainnet. Everything changes when you have a native token, because prior to that, it really is quite speculative because you have a pre-utility essentially. But you're about to have something real, and that really does change the game. Now, let's look a little bit at the metrics, for example. Now, circulating supply is 58 million roughly, total supply of 91 million. So you have, a little over half of your circ supply out there. Is there anything coming that we need to know about with regard to release of tokens or anything that's going to affect this kind of circ supply at the moment?
Yeah, so right now what we have with the mainnet, as we talked about in our official channels, we are going to increase the total token supply back to 100, okay? But this is not the circulating supply, this is the total token supply. And out of those funds, those will not be used by the company. They will be used in the growth of the ecosystem. So whether it is for the own decentralized Cosmic Swaps framework, whether it is for the Phantom Force Fund to fund developers and the creation of different decentralized applications, or whether it is by giving back to the supporters of Phantasma for the people who stake over 50,000 SOL, which is the case of Soul Masters. They will also be able to get the equivalent of an airdrop of SOL over 4 years. So basically anyone that stakes over 50,000 SOL, there's going to be a monthly airdrop of 125,000 SOL divided by all the stakers over 50.
Got it. So really it works like an interest system for a bank, except that it's rewarding those who valorize the utility and participate in the utility holding. So
and they will be getting energy, they will be participating in the network with the energy, and they will be growing the ecosystem over time. And that's ultimately what we want, is people who participate in the network, not people who just buy the token and leave it there.
Okay. Now, with regard to community sentiment, I wanted to refer to one of the Telegram participants who, by the name of Munaf-Don9052. Now, this person wrote in and was concerned at some point in time as the marketing evolved, they thought that there were lots of fake YouTubers, fake Twitter personalities who were essentially trying to, in their words, 30x with no value created and just FOMO. So I wanted to raise this directly with you, especially Alex, because you are head of the marketing strategy. Was there any time when Phantasma did engage in that kind of crypto crap where they did, go and pay that pay for peace model, which is really common, where, essentially you have to hype your own project to get it known? We understand because crypto is a really complex and convoluted space, but did you do it? And if you did, have you learned from it? Or what actually happened as the marketing strategy happened for the ICO? Yeah,
so over the past year, we've been working in the crypto space directly with influencers and understanding all the things that go around in this space. And we have seen that most of the influencers work on a pay-per-piece model. And we, for example, for the Christmas campaign, we did some promotion in regards to marketing in that sense with YouTubers and influencers where you would pay per video, for example. But ultimately what we have been growing, and it's something that we have already and that will expand in the future, is that we want to have an ambassador program where it's much more of a long-term relationship with the company, with Phantasma, and with the influencers themselves, for the influencers who actually believe in Phantasma and what we want to bring to the space.
Right.
We have an ambassador program that we are working directly with influencers to be able to provide the correct message to the community, to the overall crypto community, not just 30x or 100x, but more focusing on the technology, on the mass adoption side of things, on how we are making it much easier for users to be able to use the Phantasma app and to use different decentralized applications.
Totally understand. And Sergio, you must really appreciate that, because you would have seen also in this space a lot of the crypto BS or the blockchain BS that was happening. And I want to make it clear also to everybody that I'm not suggesting that sponsored content is a bad thing, not in any way. But there has been a real problem in the kind of manipulation, the kind of opportunism that happens, where many influencers, in fact, charge ridiculous amounts of money because they can, because there was a desperation for parties like yourselves to be known in the space, to enter into the market. But right now, the time has changed. The tide is changing because you're about to hit a mainnet. So now it really is about long-term alignment with those that want to support you, I would think. But is it tough to find those parties? Is it tough to find those who are willing to do the work with you?
It is incredibly tough.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to plug those people out there. So if you're one of the influencers out there who are the real deal, you want to support education, you want to support tech, give these guys a call and have a talk with them, because I really do want to support anyone out there who is there for the long term. Nothing wrong with being paid. Ambassadors are also very important in the space for any good project. So there's a plug for you both. Hopefully more people get on board with the ambassador programs for good projects. Now, socials, let's talk about that. Twitter, LinkedIn, Medium, Reddit, you have a telly. All of these things are ways to engage. Are you active there? Are you really making sure? Because I did read some criticisms about you that you could be more active in some of them.
Yeah, so right now we have different places where people can find us. So you have the Telegram channel, which we engage with people constantly. We also have different types of channels. For example, we have a community ambassadors channel where the most dedicated people of the community get more of into a group where you're able to provide direct feedback and to the actions and the things that are being unveiled and things like that. We have the Twitter page where we're basically announcing, and we are communicating with people there, and we have the Medium publication where we basically have everything explained down to the detail. If you want to follow Phantasma, you can follow us on the Medium page and on Twitter, and you're able to basically understand everything. And at all times, at any times, you can always message people. You can always message the people in our community. There's people who will be happy to help you out, like the community ambassadors, or even the team like Lee, Bill, Nini, me, or Sergio. We're always going to be able to answer and talk to you guys in some way or another. For example, Sergio, from the developer standpoint, if you have more technical questions and things like that, he'll be able to help you out more. But the availability that he has is also reduced because of the whole development team. But anyway, in any way, shape, or form, we're always able to help and talk to you guys out about the different things.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of all those who've wanted to know more about the updates of Phantasma, I'd like to thank you both. I'd like to thank you, Sergio, for your technological input. It's always great to have someone. You survived the interview, mate. I'm sorry there was so much we had to discuss that wasn't about the tech. I'd also like to thank you, Alex, because you're leading the marketing strategy, but you clearly know the tech, and I like that about you. You don't just, push for the marketing side. I wish you all the very best as you move towards Mainnet that's coming hopefully in this month, if not very soon after. And then after that, everything will really be showcased. And I can hear that things are in the pipeline and that you're going to keep building. You're not giving up. Interoperability is the key feature of your architecture. You are a blockchain by design. And look forward to finding out more about what you're doing. And for those who'd like to know more, make sure you check the links below. They will be there for you. But I just want to ask you both, is there anything you'd like to say to the people, just as one last statement? Sergio, we might start with you to finish off the interview.
Sure. What I will say is any developer that has a project that they want to do in blockchain, they just choose to put to our Discord, and either me or one of the developers is always there and willing to help. That's what we are waiting for.
Well, thanks, mate, for your time tonight. I appreciate it. Alex, finish it off, mate.
Yeah, and from if you want to participate in the Phantasma ecosystem and in the Phantasma community and the growth of Phantasma, so that we can all grow together, we are more than happy to welcome you guys to the community and to engage with you guys, whether it is for community ambassadors, for influencers that also want to become ambassadors of Phantasma, for people who have the dream of participating in a network where you are actually actively participating in the growth of something that will become spectacular.
And also developers. And developers also, if you're a developer out there, make sure that you get involved with some sort of, ecosystem that is trying to do something for the real world, because this is really a game changer when it comes to the whole space. Really lifting business, turning it upside down, turning essentially the marketplaces of B2C scenarios into new frames of thinking and frames of doing, more importantly. So thank you, both of you gentlemen, for your time today. I want to make it clear this was an entirely free interview. It's all about supporting projects that perhaps needed a bit of a push in the marketing part, because crypto sometimes gets lost in translation, or some projects do, simply because of the challenges inherent with the crypto casino that we also see building, and narratives and hype. This one has been around for a while and it deserves a bit of attention, I would say. So thank you very much. And I do wish you all the very best as you build out towards the next part of your development.
Thank you as well, Brad.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care, guys, and talk to you soon.